Jai Jai Ho. Just now that song was also on Krishna, and today we are so fortunate. Today is a star Rohini Nakshatram, that is Krishna's star, and we are so fortunate, we are so blessed that really Guruvayur Krishna is with us now. That is Mohanji. Dr. Mohan Ananda is another name of Krishna, and Dr. Mohan Ananda is a very affectionate and really it is the couple, Dr. Mohan Anandaji and Dr. Raji Anandaji, they are really made for each other. In Sanskrit there is a saying, Kriya Siddhi Sattve Bhavati Mahatam Nopakarane. Kriya Siddhi Sattve Bhavati Mahatam Nopakarane. Because that really works with Dr. Mohan Anandaji, and it is his pure thought that is and today's topic of that today's is the autobiography of an immigrant, and we are inviting the author of that work, and now Chiranjeev Simhalu, Sri Perambudur Kandala Babu from Chicago. We ask him to introduce Dr. Mohan Ananda, the great personality, very humble personality, and there are many more books in the fifth book about the reviews of the first book we have already published. Those who have got interest, please go through those reviews that show the personality of Dr. Mohan Anandaji. Jai Chiranjeev Simhalu, Sri Brahmadur Kandala Babu, please introduce to our audience Dr. Mohan Anandaji.
Jai Simhalu. Today's guest speaker is, as mentioned, Dr. Mohan Ananda ji from Los Angeles, California. Dr. Mohan Ananda ji was the founding chairman of Stamps.com, online shipping software that lets people purchase postage from the USPS or UPS from the comforts of their home. Stamps.com was the first ever USPS licensed vendor to offer PC postage in a software-only business model. This software is protected by several US patents. So Dr. Ananda shared how he became instrumental in raising millions of dollars. He raised millions of dollars for the company through private and public offerings. Now, because we have already gone through this, we have already introduced him for a 10 minutes introduction earlier. So I'm going to keep this little brief this time. And I'm going to just read a few reviews of the book that were published for the book that has been published. So one of the reviewers says it's like watching a Netflix series while reading Dr. Mohan's memoir. It's packed with significant historical events as experienced by the author himself. The reviewer says, I was inspired by Dr. Mohan's courage in taking risks and achieving a lot of things while remaining humble. It's an enjoyable read to learn about history, business, science, family relationships, and American and Indian culture. Most of all, this book will evoke in you a rejuvenated sense of American dream. Another, reviewer who has purchased his book says this is a nice, friendly story of an immigrant's successful life in the United States. It feels genuine and comes with lots of advice about starting a company, being an immigrant, and general happy life. So this person is a triathlete, so you know where these reviews are coming from. So there are very accomplished people are reviewing the book right now. And the other reviewer says, excellent book for these changing times, tells the story of immigration, grit and determination, and getting things done the old-fashioned way with hard work. These principles hold true regardless of where you are from. So that's, and then there are multitude of reviews. To keep it brief, I would now like to request Dr. Mohan Ananda to share his dreams, his experiences with the Goshthi and with public in general. Thank you.
Yes. Jai Dr. Mohan Ananda ji. Your word is like a
Thanks.
conch blow.
Thanks a
Jai
lot,
Shri
Dr.
Ram.
Satyavati. Thanks, Simha. It's always a pleasure to participate in your beautiful program. Of course, I had the privilege of participating previously on at least 2 occasions, and looking back, I talked part of the. This is before obviously publishing the book. I talked about my personal kind of stories which are in the book, and a number of stories were kind of. So I'm not going to repeat that today. And I also talked one day about happiness and success, happiness and what really means to me, what happiness is. And then recently I had a conversation, because there are 3 video YouTube tapes are generated out of one interview, primarily going over the as Simha said, one of the things I did is starting a company, stamps.com, and how it, of course, it's a 25-year journey. I started the company, then went through a lot of hurdles, obviously. Then they took the company public, and it grew. And this month, actually, the month of October this year, finally we sold the company to a private equity. The whole process is an amazing journey, meaning learning experience. And so that has happened. So I'm not going to talk about stamps today. The reason is you can get most of the information if you want to listen to those 3 tapes or 3 videos. That would be, that'll cover most of that. In addition to that, it's kind of discussed in the book, so there is no need to repeat it here. Another interesting thing I just want to say, this month in October, that I had 3 major kind of, I would, it's not accomplishment, but major events, let's put it. One is this sale of this company, Stamps, and it's a major sale. It's about $6.6 billion. So it's quite a lot of effort into making that happen. That's one. And that happened the first week of October. Then my book, the Autobiography of Immigrant, is published last Wednesday, meaning this, few days back. And that really is a major event to me. The reason it takes, of course, one writes the book, they will know how difficult it is. And for me, it was my first book. Obviously, I did not know very much how to write the book and all. So even though I've published a lot of papers in various, journals, magazines, and things like that, but writing a book, it was a chore. It took a lot of time, almost 1.5 to 2 years of work, but it is finally done. So that's the second accomplishment in my mind. The third thing, I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail, because that's also a major event. I started a company called, actually it's the name of the company is Innovating International Acquisition Corporation. This is like a SPAC. SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. This is something happening in the last, it has been there for some years, but last 2-3 years, it is getting quite popular. I'll walk through that, what it is. But the important thing is, if everything goes well, that company is going to go public this coming Tuesday, which means tomorrow is Monday, day after tomorrow. So that's a major event in my mind. I will kind of walk you through, and that is discussed a little bit in the book, but this is something so timely. So I thought I will go through what it is and what are the implications, just for just get the information across. Then actually what I'm going to do today, I'll just briefly discuss the book very, very narrowly, what it has and what my thought process are. That's one. Then I'll walk you through a little bit about the SPAC, what it is and how it is done. What are the? It's a business talk as far as that SPAC is concerned. And the third thing I would go through, from my own personal experience, certain events which is like turning points in my life. Of course, most people, which I have discussed in the book in a very briefly, everybody, not most people, everybody in their life, in various occasions, there are going to be certain events you will have to choose. It's like a fork. If you choose this path, you reach somewhere else. And if you choose the other path, you reach somewhere else, completely different. And you have to make a decision which path to take. And of course, you only know the path you took, whether it's good or bad, but that happens. But you may come back and think about why, or maybe I should have thought about taking the other path. But that doesn't do any good because that's already happened. You don't get, you can, navigate and change some direction later on. But I just want to share you some of my such forks or such turning points, because that might have had significant differences if I chose the other path. This is not one, two fork, or it is many times there are many forks. So the whole combination would be very, very interesting. It could have been a totally different person. But I just want to walk you through that just to give you a sample how it happens in a life. And my experience may be kind of interesting, or at least you get a picture of what went through. But I'll do that after I give a talk on SPAC. Once I've finished that, I think that will take a significant time, so that I'll end rather than going into the book. The book has, it looks like the book is, has a lot of material, about over 430 pages. So it's written more like a story, or more like, I was telling my wife that I think about telling stories to my grandchildren. When I tell stories to them, you want to make them engaged. You want them to think, oh, there is something happening. So I make it in different chapters, and I tell them once the chapter ends, they want to really wait for what the next chapter would be. So there is that continuity of little suspense. It's almost like a novel, but mine is really a autobiography. It's my own story, but I made it as much as possible. If somebody can, once you finish it, okay, you want to read that next one also. And it is not chronological. The reason I did not make it chronological, because that's a little boring, because you know what will happen, because people as they grow. So instead of that, I made it more like a certain time it starts, and as we go through, certain events will have a flashback. So you can go back and what happened during. So it's a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. Let's put it that way. So I just want to give you that thought process came to me, and that's how the book is reflected on. And the book has actually 5 chapters. Each chapter has certain sections covering different areas. And I'll kind of go through the 5 chapters. The first is general observation. I started with I came as a student in Pasadena here in Southern California at Caltech. It was 1967, so it's close, or 54 years back. And when I came, there was, I was practically fairly young, and no Indians origin people here that much. Maybe you can count in your fingers, that small. Most of the Indians at that time in the 60s generally go to England. That's the universities. English universities are more popular among Indian students. But of course, there are few, obviously, who go to America, and I was one of them. Even those who come to America, most of them go in the East Coast. I was more interested coming to West Coast. I have gone through a little bit more discussion on why I chose the school and things like that in the book. So that's where the story starts, the chapter. Then my observations, meaning general observation of what, there are several areas in that initial chapter. I call chapter and sections. Each section is a certain theme associated with that. And the second chapter is obviously my early life and education and work. So it covers a spectrum of years where, how my education helped me and what type of jobs I got. I worked at very interesting places. I worked at, obviously, NASA. Jet Propulsion Laboratory is one of the premier NASA centers, and it is dedicated to interplanetary missions. And I had the privilege of working on the first interplanetary missions to Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and various other interplanetary program. I mean, it's a amazing experience, and also I'm lucky to contribute really, really well and working with very brilliant minds. Most of the things that they are doing now is really a continuation of what we have done, even though they are doing, of course, when we did, we are talking about in the 70s, early 70s. And in the 70s, the computer's status is really poor. I mean, but with that limited computer technology or limited capabilities, even photography or various type of onboard cameras in the satellite. And we were just initiating the artificial intelligence systems to do remote management. All those things we could create. I mean, so the people working with me were incredibly smart. I mean, there is no comparison in the sense. Of course, most of these smart people today, they end up going to work for, like Google, Facebook, Amazon, because they get all the stock options and a lot of money. But those days, there were not that competition. All the smart people worked. I mean, really smart people came to work for primary places like where I worked, with JPL and other NASA centers. So that discussion, that sections in that chapter 2 will give you a little bit insight into what went on. This is all my personal relationship and personal experience. And the third chapter is something transformation for me from being an employee to an employer. Meaning, I started creating employment by starting companies. Actually, in this process, my education is very, I just want to summarize that. I got my engineering degree, and then I got my master's, and then I got a PhD in astrodynamics and control. So that's how I ended up working for NASA, as well as I went working for Department of Defense. And I would say that I'm happy to kind of say I was one of the early architects of GPS, Global Positioning System. And that is something very dear to me, even though when I started to work for, it's a weapon system. It's really a something to enhance and improve the security of the United States. Those days, if you look back, you will see there was a tremendous conflict between US and then Soviet Union. Conflict meaning it's more like a silent conflict. So it's a Cold War season, meaning there is no real war, but any day a war could come up. So we were preparing, we meaning I'm talking about the country as a whole was preparing to survive such a conflict. And we are talking about surviving, meaning surviving a nuclear war. This is not a war in what happened in Afghanistan or some other place. This is if the Soviet Union and us had a war. As a matter of fact, we were at the brink of nuclear war in 1963, I believe. I was not here. I was a student in India at the time. But when Kennedy was the president of the United States, the Russians came to Cuba, and they created certain weapon system there, and that prompted the possibility of a nuclear war or nuclear exchange, and that really contributed this fear among, of course, from our side, as well as Kennedy was strict, and the Russians withdrew and they took the nuclear weapon back to Russia. But any day, anything could happen. So we meaning the US, were very much involved in protecting or surviving a nuclear war with our capability of the weapon system. So we were building much more dangerous weapons. And GPS became the force effectiveness or the real system, because if you have most of the things, when you attack somebody, you have to drop the weapon system or weapon in the right place. So in order to reach the right target, you need to navigate it accurately. So GPS became the navigation tool for the ICBMs or any missiles or any kind of nuclear populated bombers and things like that. Every weapon system is navigated through GPS. Then the question came, if everything depends upon GPS, what if GPS is eliminated? So any system completely tied to GPS means GPS became much more valuable, because you have to make sure it survives any type of conflict. And my job, or not just a job, I was given the responsibility of making sure GPS is surviving. That's a tremendous responsibility. And, of course, looking back, I was fairly young. I had not that much experience, but somehow or other they told me, if GPS has to be the system, you have to make it survivable. The way it works, the intelligence department, the DoD intelligence group, will come up with a theory or a document called threat assessment document. They come up with the threats. What are the threats? I mean, there are many. Those documents are classified. This is all very classified work, but what I'm telling is all public information. So I wouldn't say anything classified. But that document, the various identification of threats, are totally classified, meaning that's very secret. It's compartmentalized secrets. It's not only top secret, there are different levels of secret categories. But the real reason is they recognize these are the potential threat, because they know what the Soviet Union is doing or what the other countries are doing. So they want to make sure that should survive. So they gave me the threat document and said, in order for GPS to be a real weapon system, you meaning I was in charge of it, so you have to come up with a system which survives every identified threat. So it's a major task. I of course went through. There are three potential type of threat it could come. One, the signal. GPS, maybe many of you may not know how GPS works, but it's very simple. GPS has a number of satellites in the space, and those satellites radiate signals to the Earth. And what a user, right now everybody has GPS in their cell phone, but the user, meaning that like this phone, has to capture at least 4 satellite measurements, the signal measurements. 4 measurements is because when you solve it, you need 3 position information and the time, because anything, these are all related, time and position. In fact, if you go back to Einstein's theory of relativity and relativity, space-time is the most. Space is 3 and time is 1. And space and time really doesn't have any difference. It's all together. So it's a 4-dimensional problem. But you have to get a 4 kind of, not totally orthogonal, but you have to get a 4 independent measurements to get the real solution or get the right information. Of course, in order to get 4, so we have like 24 or 30 satellites in this space, so you will get plenty of them, then you statistically process. That's how it's done. But the problem is you do need to get the signal. And signal is in the below the noise level, meaning it's like nobody knows whether there is signal. So you need to have a receiver which has a certain knowledge of this, how the signal would be, and you create in such a way that signal shows up, and then you get the measurements. That's how it's done. But one of the ways that could be threatened, and very much so, is by high altitude nuclear blast. High altitude nuclear blast meaning they go and put it in the higher atmosphere and just detonate a nuclear bomb. That creates what is called electromagnetic pulse. And the EMPs are, of course, it can destroy the communication signals, it can destroy even electricity, it can do a lot of harm. But this signal, our signal, it will be destroyed if you're not smart. So that is one problem. The second problem is the GPS satellites have the information about its position. That is, in order to get my position, many users' position, you have to process this signal knowing where the GPS satellite is. That means you're basically getting a relative information. So your GPS position, location, accuracy has to be correct. So that the way the system is done, they have a ground tracking systems distributed throughout the world, and it tracks and it computes and it uploads information. So that information is transmitted to the receiver. That's how it works. But these ground satellite stations or operating stations are vulnerable because they can bomb it. Anybody can bomb it. And once that is destroyed, now there is nobody to upload to the satellite, and that satellite accuracy or the location accuracy will be degraded. And then if it is degraded, then the utility for navigating from the user side becomes poor. So they wanted to know, how do we make sure this accuracy of the satellite is not degraded? That's the second part. Then the third part is the receiver itself. The receiver can be destroyed by some means. But of course, that problem is simpler in the sense that there are millions of receivers, so you cannot destroy all the receivers. Only some get destroyed for sure. So that is more statistically not that destroyable. So that is not my area. The other two is my problem, meaning I have to come up with a solution and actually implement it. So the first part, the signal survivability in a nuclear environment or electromagnetic pulse environment is very complicated. And also, I cannot discuss how I did it because that is completely classified. Many people don't know. Most people don't know. And we have come up with, we tested it, and it works. Hopefully, I have gone to 2 places to test it in a real world situation. We went to a place called Tromsø. Tromsø is almost, I believe, the highest latitude city. It's a beautiful city in Norway, very pretty place. It's about 74-degree latitude, I believe. So the reason is we want to go to the northmost pole, and then we take a balloon and inject barium. So barium can stimulate the EMP environment. I mean, it's without really detonating a nuclear bomb, but we can create something like that, and let us see whether we can connect the signal. So that experiment we did, and it survived. Right? So we know it will work, but of course, hope we'll never have a nuclear blast in the atmosphere, and nobody need to worry about it. But we did that test, and that signal survivability would work. We tested not only there, we also went to a city in the southern side in Australia, a place called Adelaide. Adelaide is a very big city, very pretty city. We experimented same thing like near the North Pole or near the South Pole, and we tested it. So it works. I can guarantee, but of course we haven't put the real nuclear bomb and did it. But hope we won't see that circumstance. But that signal security is done. Then there is another security of this accuracy of the satellites. It's called satellite ephemeris. I mean, it's all jargon they use. I came up with an interesting concept. That concept is, I told them, if you believe that's only from satellite to the Earth signal and try to locate the satellite location correctly, it will degrade. That's just the way the dynamics works. But if you can do what is called cross-link ranging, meaning you create another signal between the satellites. That is, the satellite, there are 20 or 24 satellites. So each satellite transmits a signal not to the ground, to the neighboring satellites. Then it connects. So you will have a multitude of interfacing measurements you will get. That is almost like creating a network. Of course, in order to do that, meaning they have to redo the satellite, they have to, the budget at that time, we are talking about this is in 1980 or 82 or 80, early 80s. At that time, the budget for doing what I suggested to them, my paper is only 2 pages or something. But it went to the highest area in Department of Defense. So they came up with a budget of over $2 billion. So I thought, this is just nobody else, this is my report. So they came back and said, yes, we are going to spend it. So they obviously put that thing in. And of course, we have done all the analysis, simulation, how it can. And I came up with the terminology called autonomous navigation. This was done in 82. Now we talk about autonomous navigation for a truck going or cars going. This was an autonomous navigation of the satellites in 1982 or something. And I have a few papers actually talking about it. And that was done, and that has been implemented, fully tested. And so even if the ground system is destroyed, it can last a minimum of 6 months, but it can actually last over 1 or 2 or more years. So it's almost like you don't need any upload to the satellite, that information. So those two are taken care of, and I take a lot of pride in accomplishing that. So I just want to give you that little taste of the work, and that is kind of discussed partially in the that is in the second chapter actually, because that's working for somebody else. I was working for NASA, I was working for DoD. And the third chapter is primarily on my various business ventures. And the business ventures, one is, there are a number of them. I mean, I'm always doing many things over the years, and I've taken 3 companies public. One is Stamps, and the second one is InvestNet. InvestNet is in the financial services company. And I have, in the book, it goes through each one of them. There are successes, there are a number of failures, but I go through all of them. And I understand there are failures, but I don't think failure is a bad thing. I consider failure is a place you learn. You become more knowledgeable. Because if you have everything successful, you would not know when something goes wrong. Here, now I have this experience of number of failures and enough successes. So when I face a failure, I can rationalize and understand. So that is in the book. That chapter 3 has many, number of companies. And also in another one, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, is the SPAC, the Special Purpose Acquisition, which I will discuss. The book covers quite a lot of material. And the chapter 4 is primarily about my family and my personal life. It's a lot of stories. To some extent, I have covered in my last talk to this group, meaning you can go back into probably not everything the way, there are more things, but I think I covered quite a bit. So I'm not going to talk about any of that today, except I will come back, and I told you I had my personal, this forks or various turning events, and I will go through that. Will give a kind of a connection to my personal life and this to some extent. And the last chapter, the 5th chapter, only 5 chapters, it's mostly for kind of my prediction about the future. It's in a limited way, what I think the trend is. And then I also have some very limited advice to younger people, because I have this wealth of experience, and I just want to share to the younger generation. They may benefit by it, because I think I've seen quite a bit, and sometimes these young people have a tendency to be very, and when they see something, they get, kind of, not the fear, they just stop it and go and do something else. No, I think the recommendation or advice I'm giving may be useful, valuable in taking it as some kind of a guidance. So I put that in the chapter 5. This is the overall area of my book. Now, since I know the time is limited, but let me kind of now get back to this SPAC. The reason I want to talk about it, most people, most ordinary, normal people, they just don't know what I'm talking, or what is SPAC, because that's not a common thing. But I think there is value to it. Let me walk you through in the simplest way. Generally, when you start a company, you have raised. There are 3 elements to starting a company. You need to have a good team, meaning people. Then you need to have whether it's a product or it's a service, something like that. And third is the money, capital. And the capital generally, when you start, you put your own money. And of course, if you're talking about just a mom and pop operation, then nothing else happens. You put money, you start a company, and you get some revenue, and then you make some money, and that's it. But if you're really thinking of starting a company which can grow, which become big, then there are certain steps you have to take. And one of the things you do as it grows, and you have to go to venture firms or a private equity group or whoever can put money in, because meaning the people close to you can only put so much money, but you may need a large amount of money. But there are investors ready to put money if it is done right. That's all private capital. That's all coming from investors without really having any kind of liquidity. Because if liquidity meaning, if you put money in, the only time you can take the money back if the company gives them. Otherwise, it's very difficult to sell it to somebody and things like that in a private company environment. But the next step is to get the company go public. When the company go public, that is a liquidity event. meaning people, those who invest in the company, whenever they want, they can sell it because its public market is there. So it's much more, of course, assuming you invest at a lower value and you sell at a higher value, you make money. But it will happen if it grows. So that's the way most companies raise in a public market capital. That's the common practice, and I have done, like the stamps, for example. I have done, initially went to public. That company went public in actually 99, and we raised about $60 million. And then soon after, within 6 or 7 months, we went on a secondary offering. And the secondary offering, we went and raised close to 400 or 450 million because the value of the company was very good. So we went and got and raised that. So that is the way you raise money for a company in a public market. So that's one company. And then another one, this was done in a NASDAQ. There are exchanges called NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange. So those are the two. In fact, in olden times, they used to have an American Stock Exchange. But right now, the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ are the two exchanges in America, which probably, do the public offering for almost all companies. Then there are smaller exchanges, but these are the two major exchanges. And the stamps was taken at the NASDAQ. And then another company I helped found it. That company's name is Investment. Investment is in the financial transaction or financial management space. It's a very, very interesting, very growth-oriented company. And one of the, when I started the company, my concern was because when you start any company, the initial expenses are going to be much, much higher than any revenue you can generate. In certain fields, like in stamps, you won't get any revenue until the USPS approves it. So that's almost like a most difficult part. But even in a consultation or financial services type of areas, even there the revenue part will be very slow. It will take some time to grow. So you need a lot of capital to make it happen. So I told the real founder, his name is Sureshiva, I told him, look, in order for us to do, we have to cut the cost. We have to cut the cost, meaning we have to reduce the expenses in some form or whatever form. So one of the things I suggested, instead of having employees here, meaning in the United States, we have to pay much higher salaries to employees. So I suggested to them, why don't we open an office in India? In India, salaries are high there, but relatively, it's almost a fraction. In fact, in many cases, it's 1/4 to 1/3 or even, high paying 1/2. So there is a significant savings. So he understood, he talked about, and we had the book really goes through certain interesting concepts there. And we started the place where I come from, in Trivandrum. And it was a good thing they did. But for that event, the company would not have been successful. I'm telling you today. But right now, they have over 2,500 people working in India. And they have also around 2,500 in America. And we took the company in the New York Stock Exchange, and the symbol is ENV. And they are, currently valued close to $5 billion or something. So it's a very, very successful company. And they are now managing, I don't know exactly the number, close to $1 trillion assets under management. That's the terminology in the financial services. So it's a very, very successful, and it is growing very rapidly. And the senior management is very, very good. So they're doing a good job. I don't have direct participation in the company. But one of the reasons I don't have it now, because in India, many people are working, so they wanted to have their own office building. And there were some difficulties for them to build. So we formed an Indian company, which I kind of, I work as an executive chairman. So and we built the building and we provided to the company. So because of that reason, I stepped out of the board, because there is kind of potentially a conflict, but there is no conflict if you disclose, and that is all true. But to be very clear, but I have a good relationship with them, and they are our tenant now. The company is a major, the tenant in our building in Toronto. It's a beautiful place, and anybody goes there, you can go and visit to that place. So that's, then I also took another company public in London Stock Exchange. That's more like a venture firm. It's called JAB Ventures, and we invested in various companies. And one of the companies I was on the board is called RM Auctions. This is an interesting story. In fact, it's in the book. They auction off very expensive cars, and they have every year in Carmel, in the month of August, there is an auction. And I used to go there because I'm on the board, so I go and so the rich and famous will come. And one of the cars I was thrilled about, this is a car, a Mercedes-Benz car, an old car, in the almost shape of a cigar. That car was owned by Hitler, and that became famous because Hitler owned it. And that car, when I was there, or in my tenure, was auctioned off for $39 million. Of course, these cars are not for driving on the road. These are for people just keep it, and maybe periodically they may look at the document or something. Anyway, so that RM Auctions was the company, and now that company has been sold to one of the largest auction companies, Sotheby's. It's called RM Auctions Sotheby. So, my experience is very interesting. I have this exposure to those type of things. So those are all in that. You can get much more details in the book. Now, coming back to this raising capital. So most companies raise capital in the public market after they are successful. That is when they are ready, they are ready for an IPO, then go and have an investment banker, and then go through, it's a long process, but that's the process by which they raise capital. The SPAC is a little different. Actually, the SPAC is known as a blank check company, meaning no real company. See, my company's SPAC name is Innovative International Acquisition Corp. We don't have any real product. We don't have any real workers, except we have a good team. We have an excellent team. That's very important. They are really valuing our team. By the way, if anybody wants to, you can go and look at the Innovative Acquisition. You can Google them and get the site and look at it. It's a very, very nice presentation. Oh, by the way, there is a site called Autobiography of an Immigrant.com. So you can get that also, just if you want to go and look at that, about the book. But this company, we have a very good team, excellent team. And we have put together, see, whenever this team includes not only our board, our management, our board, plus our partners. You need an investment banker, you need a good legal counsel, you need a good accounting firm, and you need a good auditing firm. And then we have a PR firm. We have, of course, this particular company is registered in Cayman Islands, not here in America. The reason is Cayman is, we are looking for companies either in the US or outside the US. If it is in the US, it doesn't really make any difference. Of course, the US operations would be here. But if you are bringing an outside company, if the company is formed in the US there is much, much more complicated process. But if it is in Cayman, as an example, because it's an overseas to begin with, then the process is much simpler. So that's the reason this particular one is a Cayman Island entity. So the laws, of course, we have to follow the laws of US. We have to follow the laws of Cayman. Oh, by the way, I don't know whether I said I'm a lawyer. I became, after I got my PhD, after working for many years, I decided to go to law school. The reason I went to law school, then I started looking in America, all the leadership, government leadership, or powerful people, or people those who do major things. Statistically, 90% of them are lawyers. That's the way I see it. Then I said, I don't think you can fight them. The only thing you can do is join them. So I decided to go to law school. I've been in practice of law for the last 35 plus years. I mean, I've done, of course, that has helped me to do many things, because even though when you're a lawyer and you do something, I don't give advice to myself. No, I'll get the best law firm in the country and they advise you and you take their word. But when they advise whether that is good or bad, because you have done the legal. So that's how I do. So our legal team and our, they are exemplary, the best in the country. So those things are helping us. And okay, now once you go through this relationship and everything is done, what you have to come up with a framework. What are you going to do? You decide to go and raise money. That is, you want to raise. We are raising around $250 million. Not big, but not small. But when somebody is putting money into it, they need to know, what are we going to do with the money? So you have to come up with a plan, a document. And the document is it's about 350 pages long. It's almost much larger than my book, probably. And we have to file that with the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission. They are the gatekeeper of all these things. And that we have to follow the specific statutory requirements. We have to go through all the regulations. So there is a very, very well established protocol. So we have to go through all those things. And we obviously met all those. And S1 is filed. And then the idea is to raise the capital, meaning you have to have a roadshow, talking to people, what the story is. And then obviously, hopefully, this is happening Tuesday, hopefully we will raise the money. But the raising the money is only one part of it. And the second part is you have to now find a company which is already happening, meaning it is working, they have revenue, they are successful, but they have not gone public. They are thinking about going public. Instead of them going public, they can come and join us. We call it a demerger, a demerging activity between that company and us. But we cannot go and talk to those companies before we complete the raising of the capital. That's one of the requirements in the SEC regulations. That is, once the combination happens, then the companies that goes into the open public market, then it just like any other company in the public market, it grows. That is the SPAC kind of scenario I went through. A little bit, the book also it has, but I thought it would be interesting, something new that is happening. And I'm learning. I've learned quite a bit in this process because everybody is learning. It's a new process. It is really, I think it will revolutionize, because going through a normal IPO will be more cumbersome than this demerging with an existing SPAC, because an existing SPAC is based on the people, meaning the investors know my credential, my background, our team's credential, team background. So that's why they are doing it. Whereas the company, of course, they look at the management, but when the company comes, the management is important, but they have to know the performance of the company. That is much more. So here, what they're doing, it is done in two stages. The investors don't worry about the part of what the company's performance is. Investors are more interested in the people. That these people, when they go and bring the company, they review the performance of the company and get the right company. So that's I'm just comparing that typical IPO versus a SPAC related IPO. So I think that's discussed a little bit in the book, but I think I wanted to share that as something happening as we speak. Now, I want to, just before finishing, I want to talk about, I told earlier, this various life turning points happens in everybody's life. It's not just mine, but I have quite a few, and I want to share some of them. And I don't know if whether I've chosen the right path or what would happen if I chose some other path. So just to give an example of it, in 1962, when I was applying for engineering college, I got admission to many, but let me just want to give you two schools. One is I got admission to IIT Delhi, and I also got admission to Coimbatore Institute of Technology. It's called CIT. So those are the two schools So I was contemplating which one to go, because my parents were living in Delhi, but they didn't live all the time there. They lived in Trichy, because we are from Kerala, but my parents were living in Tamil Nadu. But my father was a member of parliament, so we have a house in Delhi, so he commutes back and forth. So, but IIT Delhi did have no real history. It just formed that year or prior year. They didn't have even a campus. And there was not really that. There were at the time, I think IIT Kanpur, IIT Kharagpur, and maybe IIT Bombay. I mean, there are a few IITs, but IIT Delhi is just brand new. And so I, obviously was elected. But CIT, I knew because it's in Tamil Nadu, it's close to home. I mean, it's when I know about the CIT, the principal at the time. In fact, his name is P.R. Ramakrishnan, and he was also a member of parliament. So he's a friend of my father. And in fact, one of the persons I dedicated my book, I have dedicated a number of people, and is P.R. Ramakrishnan, and he's no more, but I have a lot of respect for him. But so I made a decision to go to CIT rather than IIT. But you can always look back and say, if I've gone to IITs, obviously a lot of IIT graduates have done marvelous things. In fact, if you look at many of the successful entrepreneurs in this country are from one of the IITs. But I did get admission, but I didn't go. But I went to CIT, but I'm happy, but I just want to give that fork did happen. That's one. Okay, then when I was studying in Coimbatore, there was this is very interesting. There is some story about in the book. You may want to do a little bit more research. There was an advertisement. I'm a person who kind of goes for everything that is available. I mean, that's just my personality. So there was an advertisement for new face by, I think it's called, I don't remember the names and all. Then it's India Film Institute and some production company in Bombay at the time, even now it's Mumbai. And they were advertising for new faces for audition. So I didn't tell my parents or my real friends. I said, I'll apply. I mean, not that time. First of all, it's in Hindi movies, and I don't speak Hindi that well. But I do speak some because my parents live in Delhi, so we go to Delhi So, friends and also I can understand, but not in any real fluency. So I applied. So of course, anybody applied, they wanted us to go to Bombay. And so I did go. I had all kind of auditions, and then there was, just to make the story short, it's in the book a little bit more. It took about 3 or different stages. So every time I went into the next stage, or again next stage, and third stage or whatever. And I was very young. I was the youngest of the group. Most of them were in over 20 or 22, 23, and I was like 17 or few years young, and with the lack of fluency in the language. But I was selected to the last few people, and it was several days, maybe 2 weeks or something. Various kind of real. They're taking real film and various type of actual events. They will give you a script and you have to do, and there are songs you have to do, dancing and things like that. It's an interesting experience. But I obviously I didn't get selected. I was either number 2 or number 3. The person who got selected was Rajesh Khanna. So he's, of course, became one of the most famous Hindi actors in the country. And that's not means if I would have become, I don't know. But after this is done, the various people involved came to me and said, Mohan, it may not be a bad idea, this you didn't get, but you should actually pursue this path because you have some kind of a talent, and you should try to leverage and see whether that can be done. I listened to them. I said, sure, thanks a lot. Then I came home. I never looked back. So that was another interesting turning point. So I didn't pursue, and I sometimes kid my wife that if I were in there, maybe the whole thing would have been different. So that did happen, and then the other one. Just a few more. I will stop it. When I got admission. By the way, when I applied, I got admission to 5 colleges in US and Canada, 4 in the US and 1 in Canada. I got into Stanford, I got into Harvard, I got into MIT, I got into Caltech, and there is a university called McGill University in Canada. And it's a very, very good university. And every school gave me some scholarship. And the highest scholarship actually came from McGill. That's equivalent to the Caltech. I got like $250 per month. McGill was like $450 or something. We are talking about 1967. Okay, so this is a major decision I have to make. Which one to select? Now I'm not applying. They gave me admission. Now I have to select. So I did go through that discussion in the book a little bit more in detail. So I selected Caltech. And the reason is because when I was in college, I was as students of fluid mechanics or mechanical engineering, and one of the subject matter is fluid mechanics. And there is one book we followed, or we were recommended, and I had the book called Gas Dynamics, and Gas Dynamics written by 2 professors, Liebman and Roshko. And both Liebman and Roshko was teaching at Caltech. So I knew as if, even though I've never seen him, I never talked to him, as if I have some personal relationship with these 2 professors. So I kind of, in my very limited knowledge about American and Canadian, which universities, all schools are, very, very highly prestigious school, or MIT or Harvard or Stanford and Caltech. But then I found out Caltech is in Pasadena. It's a little warmer weather, Southern California. The others are all maybe cold. So, and specifically because of this book, I said, okay, I will, in addition to that, that is one. Then I also was a student of, very keen student of physics. And physics, I've heard about Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winning. So I said, he's at Caltech. So I never thought that I'll be working with him or participating in, but I mean, it would be nice to see somebody who is that smart, and you get to. So those are the reasons I decided to come to Caltech. But life would have been, in fact, that's another day somebody was asking, how come you didn't go to Silicon Valley? You were in Stanford, you would have, I mean, who knows? The life is that path, you never know. But that is one event that did happen. Then the one other interesting thing, I think I will stop it with this because there are several incidents everybody's life has, but this is very interesting. After I finished my college, there is those days, I don't know whether this happens now, one of the very prominent companies at that time frame is called Delhi Cloth Mills, DCM. Delhi Cloth Mills is, I mean, they manufacture wool, silk, I mean, very, very big company. And this is owned by, primarily owned by two brothers, Bhagat Ram and Charat Ram. They are, headquartered in Delhi. And they in order to get this job, this is called the management job, position, and they become manager of, their units. So I wrote an exam. This is the same thing. But I wrote the exam after I got admission to America. So I just did it just to find out what's going on. So I was not interested in getting the job at all. So I took the exam though. Then I was, as a matter of fact, I was in Delhi because my parents were at the time. But then I came back to Trichy, taking all my things to come to US. So getting the bags, everything ready. So when I came, I got a telegram. These are the days important things come as telegram. So they said, you are selected for an interview. So that is interesting. Then not only they send a telegram, they also send a voucher, coupon, to fly from Trichy to Delhi by plane. I've never traveled by plane before that. So that was a very interesting, it's okay, they're giving a free trip now. I have to go to Delhi to fly back to America. So I will, now I have a free transportation from, and also an experience of flying in India. But otherwise, maybe, if I'm coming back from Delhi to America, up to Delhi, I generally take train. That's the process. But anyway, they gave me a free ticket. So I took it and went. I was in Delhi. And then I went for the interview. And they were there. I knew that I won't take the job, obviously, because I didn't want to. But I was, I wanted to do my best because, I went there and interview was very nice. They asked all kind of questions. And then the interview finished and I came home. The next day, I got a telegram, you're selected. Both my parents, especially my mom, was so thrilled. She almost said, she calls me Mohan, meaning son, don't go to America. You don't know any place, nobody there. I have also an appointment letter. I have been appointed in a place called Kota, which is in Rajasthan, which is a wool mill. And I'll be working under the general manager there and, learning the thing and hopefully take some position up there. So she was really, really interested in me not going to America. My father was not that particular. He said, whatever you want, you do. But she tried her level best. But I told her, no, I've decided I'm going to go. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that's another turning point. I may have another 10 or 15, so I'm not going to go through. But the book has some of these events, happening in my life, which is very interesting and my own. But this is common to everybody. all these things. But I just wanted to highlight some of the interesting events in my life. And I enjoyed the talk. And if anybody has any questions, either you can communicate to me or through Dr. Satyavati or Simha or whoever, and I can get the email, and I'll be very happy to respond, in the right circumstances. So thanks a lot. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Mohanji. Yes. Thanks a lot, Dr. Mohanji. We are so happy. We can really, but only thing is no question answer session we have started yet. So we always only ask our audience, those who are listening, please send their questions to Dr. Mohan Ananda. You can give your email or whatever the way they contact. And we also give to our Facebook page, Sri Pravachana Goshthi, which so many are watching already in that. So Sri Pravachana Goshthi, if you send some message, or even you can ask the profile Satyavati S. Kandala. Also there are some people have any questions, they can easily, directly they can contact Dr. Mohan Ananda ji also. And also they can send.
Yes, I can give my email.
Please.
Mine is very simple. mohanananda@gmail.com.
Oh, very easy. Very good.
Ananda,
Excellent.
One word.
Yeah.
At gmail.com. So I'll
Excellent.
get, and if I get any kind of communication, I will respond.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
pretty
you.
good in responding.
In the
But
same
it
way,
may take
Satyavati.
some time, but I will respond.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohanji. And one thing, in the same way, my email is also Satyavati @gmail.com. So they can also give this one. And now really I appreciate for his the great achievement in life. Only one word I just want to say, that usually we always say, Kriya Siddhi Sattve Bhavati Mahatam Nopakarane, as he was a Sanskrit student, as he was a lover of Sanskrit. So this really he appreciates. This says, the actions of great people are accomplished by their inner strength, not by the means of resources of doing it. So this is a exemplary of the Dr. Mohan Anandaji's life. Beautifully he gave to us in the Autobiography of an Immigrant. That book I request and recommend all our audience and our Facebook friends and others to get that one and go through and go to him again. Go to him, ask him to come one more time, to come and give us in detail also so many more things, because we have to read in between the lines. That is the greatness of that book. So we really appreciate. Like this particular one, now we invite Dr. Raji Anandaji. The couple is made for each other, and Dr. Raji Anandaji is a neurologist, and she is the great inspiration. Dr. Mohanji, I appreciate one word. I still always remember about Dr. Raji Anandaji. He said she is a devotee of Guru Vairappa, the Krishna. She is a great devotee of Guru Vairappa, but I am her devotee. That's a great comment. I never forget Dr. Raji is the same. So, Krishna today is a Rohini star, the star of Krishna. Mad Bhakta Bhakteshu Preetihi Adhika. That means Madbhakta Bhakteshu. That means the devotee of Krishna is Dr. Raji Ananda. And Dr. Raji Ananda devotee is Dr. Mohan Ananda ji. So Krishna's love is more to Mohanji. That's the great way. He is easy. He knows. You ask Mohanji to find the easy solutions. For all easy solutions, Mohanji is there. Yes, Mohanji. Thank you so much. So
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha നന്ദഗോപകുമാരായ ഗോവിന്ദായ നമോ നമഃ നമോ നമഃ നമോ നമഃ. നന്ദ ഗോപാല നന്ദ ഗോപാല മുകുന്ദ ഗോകുല നന്ദന യമുന തീര വിഹാര നന്ദ ഗോപാല മുകുന്ദ ഗോകുല നന്ദന യമുന തീര വിഹാര നന്ദ ഗോപാല. മന്ദര ഗിരിധര മാധവ മാധവ മന്ദര ഗിരിധര മാധവ മാധവ മുരളീധര മധുസൂദന ഹാര മുരളീധര മധുസൂദന ഹാര നന്ദ ഗോപാല മുകുന്ദ ഗോകുല നന്ദന യമുന തീര വിഹാര നന്ദ ഗോപാല. മന്ദഹാസവദന മഞ്ജുള ചരണ അരവിന്ദലോചന ആശ്രിത രക്ഷണ പീതാംബര ധര പന്നഗ ശയന പീതാംബര ധര പന്നഗ ശയന കലികൽമഷ ഹരണ കരുണ പൂർണ വന്ദിത മുനി വൃന്ദ ഗുരു ഗുഹാനന്ദ വന്ദിത മുനി വൃന്ദ ഗുരു ഗുഹാനന്ദ കുണ്ടസ്ഥിതാനന്ദ കന്ദ ഗോവർധനോദാര ഗോപസ്ത്രീജാര ഗോവിന്ദ വന്ദിത മുനി വൃന്ദ ഗുരു ഗുഹാനന്ദ വൈകുണ്ഠ സ്ഥിതാനന്ദ കന്ദ ഗോവർധനോദാര ധനോദാര ഗോപസ്ത്രീജാര ഗോവിന്ദനന്ദ ഗോപാല മുകുന്ദ ഗോകുല നന്ദന യമുനാ തീര വിഹാരനന്ദ ഗോപാല. ജയ ശ്രീമൻ നാരായണ.
Jai Sivanarayan. We really appreciate Dr. Raji Anandaji. Apart from her profession, the great profession she has is Dr. Mohan Anandaji's taking care of Dr. Mohan Anandaji, I say. Now we will request Dr. Mohan Anandaji and Dr. Raji ji to together to give just further receive the blessings of Vedic blessings. Jai Sivanarayan. Let both of them be together. Just Srimate Ramaya.
I'm joining right here.
Yeah. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Prudhivi Santa Sa Agrirna Santa Somas Santa Sujagum Samayatu Antarikshagum Santam Tadvayuna Santam Tanme Santam Sujagum Samayatu Dyau Santa Sadityena Santa Same Santa Sujagum Samayatu Prudhivi Santi Antarikshagum Santi Dyau Santi Disha Santi Antarikshagum Santi Agni Santi Vayu Santi Aditya Santi Chandrama Santi Nakshatrani Santi Apa Santi Oshadhaya Santi Vanaspataya Santi Gau Santi Raja Santi Asva Santi Purushansa Purusha Santi Brahma Santi Brahmana Santi Santireva Santi Santi me astu Santi. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Blessings to Dr. Mohan Ananda ji with Dr. Raji Ananda ji for 100,000 years to the fame and name should worship and all over the world. They remain and ever living. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Sri Pravachana Goshthi always remembers this couple. So yes, thank you. And always one more time, one more lecture in the same way, Dr. Raji also, one more songs all the time. Your presence is really great. Pleasure to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope we can meet in person soon.
Well, yeah.
Hope we can meet in person soon, Anna.
We are looking forward to hope we can meet in person as well.
Sure. And Srini and Simha and all are here. And Dr. all are here. We really appreciate everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mohan Ananda ji.
Thanks
And
a lot.
Dr. Raji
Thank
ji.
you.
Yeah. Om Sarva Krishna Dev ॐ मङ्गलं श्रीकुरुक्षेत्रे रणक्षोणिविहारिणे पार्थसारथिरूपाय गीताचार्याय मङ्गलम् भारद्वाजकुलमृतो दधिविधो आचार्यपीठे सितुः श्रीनिवासरामानुजार्य गुरोः आप्तागमान्तद्वयं तत्पादार्चनधारकं मनुमणिध्यानोल्लसन्मानसं रामकृष्णमाचार्यम् अस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे पार्थसारथिं गीताचार्यम् अस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे वेङ्कटाचार्यस्वामिनम् अस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे श्रीमन्नारायणाचार्यम् अस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः जय श्रीमन्नारायण थैंक यू so much thank you to both of you
See you.